Good morning, everyone. Quake weather here, and we're going to follow up with the forecast we put out a few days ago, as we did get a successful hit with that major 6.8 earthquake in New Zealand. We're starting, as we always do, with Solar Dynamics Observatory, looking at the coronal holes. So this is a, forgive the flashiness that sometimes happens with the SDO website. I'll try to make this quick, so because I know this can be a little irritating. So the coronal hole is directly facing Earth now. There were some branches of it that are already turning away. So the forces from these minor areas are what's impacting the interplanetary magnetic fields and triggering seismic events like the one in New Zealand we forecasted a few days ago. So let's move over to get out of this flashy screen here and look at this. So this is what we're looking at. Green is positive magnetic polarity, and it's an extension of the southern solar polar field. We still have this is a really large coronal hole, by the way. I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is actually like the largest coronal hole we've seen this solar cycle. I'm almost positive it is. This is massive. I mean, it's almost a majority of the Earth-facing surface of the sun is a coronal hole. That does not happen very often, and we're just coming off of solar maximum. I don't know that we're still technically in it. I think we're winding down. Sunspot numbers have decreased. We're not in solar maximum anymore. A lot of people are still saying that we are. I don't think that's accurate. If you really understand the solar cycles, we're not in we've hit peak solar maximum, and we're coming down off it. So like when we hit solar maximum, it doesn't just like immediately go down to solar minimum. There's a bell curve to everything. It slowly goes up. It peaks for quite a while, right? And then it slowly starts to come down. And I think we've already hit We've already hit peak sunspot numbers, and solar maximum. We're starting to come down now. And that's when coronal holes like this will have a lot of extra strength and power. That's when I think coronal holes trigger larger events and probably even more frequent, 6 magnitude or higher events. So we get, I think, a larger frequency of large magnitude, but also the magnitude itself increases. Coronal holes, I think, trigger, at least we've been able to prove, and it's a working theory, that the coronal holes, especially ones these large, just after a solar maximum, tend to have more power, be more powerful, stronger. So that's what we're looking at. Again, green is positive magnetic polarity, and it is an extension of the southern solar polar field for where we're at in this solar cycle. Let's go over here to the mean sea level pressure. This is the fun stuff right here where we try to pinpoint location. So again, what we look for are these purple areas, low pressure cells near plate boundaries. So up here in Alaska, sure, and these move around. So when we did it a few days ago, this whole area right here didn't have a lot of purple in it. Now it does. This is a lot of low pressure cell activity. So this area all right here in Indonesia could be a little more active. We start seeing this purple area develop over here. West of India, right here. Let's just zoom in a little bit. So this area right here, I'm not sure if that's still Iran. I know this is Iran right here. And we'll get to the earthquake map in a minute and start comparing all these things. But let's go over here just real quick. Well, actually, no. Let's not go over there real quick just yet. Let's stay here. So New Zealand had a major quake all the way down here. No low pressure cell, right? The area I was looking at a lot right here was this whole area right here, because we were seeing a lot of blot echo events. And blot echoes are those real deep earthquakes that are, 100 kilometers or deeper in this region of the world. Anything over 100 kilometers deep that's above 4 magnitude, it's possible that is a precursor to a larger seismic event. And when we say larger seismic event, we mean 6 magnitude or higher. 6 magnitude is the standard, at least with us, with quake weather. And maybe, I know there's at least one other channel out there that 6 magnitude is a good standard, because statistically speaking, if you look at the earthquakes worldwide, 5 magnitude is a 50-50 whether or not it's statistically relevant for an earthquake forecasting system. 6 magnitude is a lot higher because they happen a lot less frequently. And the chances of somebody just getting lucky and saying, oh, okay, in this time period, a 6 magnitude is going to occur, the chances of that happening are a lot lower. With a 5 magnitude, I mean, it's pretty fair gambling. You know what I mean? They happen all the time. So while smaller events, especially clusters of them happening in a relatively short time frame, like 5 days or less, those are significant in the sense that they're significant in giving us an indicator whether or not a larger event is going to occur. But when it comes to actually forecasting anything below 6 magnitude, I don't think that's fair game to say, hey, we successfully forecasted that, because let's be honest, these earthquakes almost all of them occur on plate boundaries. They occur in the same areas all the time. They always have. And 5 magnitude is just not that significant. I wouldn't consider it a successful forecast if it was anything less than a 6 magnitude. Anything. Anyways, don't want to lecture you guys about that. So we still got this area right here. Low pressure cell activity, just a tiny bit on the west coast of South America. We started seeing some events over here in the Caribbean. There was some low pressure cell activity here a few days ago when we did the forecast, and we did have seen a little cluster of shaking too, which we'll get into in a minute. But if you look, while there's no low pressure cell here as of yet, look at this massive high pressure cell. This high pressure cell is like, it's huge, right? So there's just all kinds of charged particles being drawn in from the upper atmospheres, the ionosphere, all those charged particles being brought down from this high pressure cell and being brought down into this yellow area. Remember, it goes from high, gray, to yellow, which is like going downward, and then purple are the low, right? So the yellow is kind of like the color that represents the area in the atmosphere in between the high pressure cell and the low pressure cell. High is gray, low is purple. So we have seen some clusters over here in the Caribbean, but not entirely uncommon. And so, all right, let's zoom out a little bit. That's interesting. That's interesting too over here in Iran. So let's go back over here. So here, let's look at this area. So Japan, when we did the forecast before, I believe something about this size, this low pressure cell was over here, but it was only in the very, very northern areas of Japan. Now, almost all of Japan is in between 2, possibly 3 low pressure cells. So if we zoom in a little bit, this is way over here, but we have this massive one right here. So all this high pressure cell charged particles are all just funneling in right into this area right here. So I would keep an eye on Japan for the next few days. We are going to start, I know this is hard to look at with the flashing. This is a very powerful coronal hole. I would expect the forces of this to be peaking over the next 3 days. So if today's Tuesday, I would say Wednesday, Thursday, Friday are going to probably Thursday would be about the peakish. And again, this is just approximation. But for the rest of the week, let's just say for the rest of the week, we're going to be seeing the peak of this coronal hole hitting Earth. And then this is a lot larger than usual. I don't like to have a forecast period that lasts more than 5 days. It just feels kind of ridiculous. However, when we have a coronal hole this big, the forces from that coronal hole, unfortunately, are going to be affecting us for about a week. They've been affecting us for a few days already, and we got at least another probably 5 days if this thing remains this size. And again, these coronal holes, they change shape and size, so this could get a lot smaller and it could cut the time off. But as of now, Tuesday, March 25th, yeah, man, it's we'll still be feeling the effects of these. If this coronal hole keeps its strength and size, will be affecting us for another 5 days through the weekend. But definitely going to be peaking Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So let's go back to the sea level pressure, look at some more low pressure cells. So Hawaii, not seeing anything right now. There was yesterday, but again, these things change. There was over down here, like in the central area of Mexico, there was some low pressure cells there, and I had my eye on it, but there's no more low pressure cells there. Doesn't mean they're totally out of the clear, but there you go. So Japan, just this whole area right here in the southwestern Pacific. And since although there is not a low pressure cell here in southern New Zealand where we had that major quake, they did have a major quake there, and they could have another one. They could have a really big aftershock, or, you know, possibly maybe even a larger event is, you know, possible, I suppose. U.S. West Coast, not really seeing anything. You know what I mean? This is you always get these tiny little pockets of like low pressure cell activity near Baja California. If you're from California and you watch all those small quakes and you drive yourself crazy watching those 24-hour live streaming YouTube quake weather channels. You know, you look at the Salton Sea, there's always tiny events at the Salton Sea. It's hard to really, you know, gauge if that's something real or if that's part of like, I believe one of our members mentioned that there's a, I don't think it's a factory. Maybe it's like some mining or something that happens there. And anyways, there was a anthropological reason or explanation for why there's so many tiny events that happen right there at the Salton Sea, which is right there. Anyways. Let's go out from that. Let's look over at Europe, where the volcanoes are. It's probably the most worrisome volcano over here in Italy. Okay, not too bad. Not too bad. Doesn't mean they're 100% out of the clear, but not too bad. So this area right here, we didn't have any low pressure cells here when we did the forecast on the 22nd, but I noticed there was definitely one developing right here, which I'm pretty sure is in Iran. So let's look at the daily weather OLR anomalies. Let me scroll down here. Just bear with me a second. There we go. Daily OLR anomaly. So right here, see, that's a yeah. Not too often you see OLR anomalies that large. That is really big. Interesting. So yeah, still some area in that Tonga, Fiji area. Might see some shaking over there. Since we saw, so this is where we like to correlate these two things. So one of our main correlations here is low pressure cells. So three things: low pressure cells, which is these purple areas, near plate boundaries, which are, right? See these red lines right here? These are plate boundaries. So when we see strong, we have coronal holes pulling down charged particles through high pressure to low pressure cells, which was those purple areas here, right? And then we have outgoing long wave radiation, which is the upward movement of charged particles coming from the lithosphere. And that makes kind of the, think of it as completing an electrical circuit. That's essentially what it is, right? It's just here, we're not using wires and stuff like that. So we have these upward moving particles, outgoing long wave radiation. We have the mean sea level pressure bringing in charged particles from space into these low pressure cells. And these are all near the plate boundaries. So that's three to, determine location forecasting, which is so much more difficult and less accurate than the timing. When it comes to the timing at Quake Weather, we're like 96% accurate. If I give you a small window of time, 3 to 5 days, it is almost, not 100%, but 95%, let's just say, guaranteed that there will be a 6 magnitude event in that time frame. So determining location is a lot harder. The accuracy for determining location goes down significantly. It is not in the 90th percentile. I really wish it was, but it's not. Maybe when we start getting better satellite data and we can get more frequent updates and a higher resolution data view of the total electron content and things that are going on in the ionosphere, that will help, which I believe there's some progress being made in that realm. So, but going back to this, so low pressure cells, we have outgoing long wave radiation anomalies down here, but there's still some power from it coming down here. So if we go right here, down here, these are all like little Indonesian islands. I would definitely have Indonesia on alert right there, and the Philippines up here. Philippines does get earthquakes, so more often than other places. So, and then we come over here. See, there's a big OLR anomaly right here. This is up by like Ecuador and El Salvador and stuff. So, let's look at the MSLP for that. So, are there any low pressure cells here? So, not really, kind of, sort of, nothing really too powerful, but some strong outgoing long wave radiation. And we do have, some circling charged particles there. So maybe keep an area or an eye on El Salvador too. I'd put them at medium risk. Let's see. Nothing in South America, and they have small So, and this is the area in Mexico, about the area I was looking at yesterday, that had low pressure cells. So maybe put them on low to medium risk as well. If we go back over here to Iran, see, in this entire Asia area, there is a kind of not very powerful OLR right there. So now if we look at the earthquakes, the latest earthquakes, let's see. So this is the New Zealand quake. This is the largest. Happened all the way down here. Right, this is the area we're looking at. Still seeing some blot echoes there. We've had 2 today. You know, it's these blot echoes don't always play out, but you see a lot of very, very deep. Look at that 585. That's just so far down. Anything above 4 magnitude that's this far deep is 600 kilometers is usually typically a precursor to a 6 magnitude or higher event. However, I would, of all the places in the world, this is where that plays out the least. Meaning, they get blot echoes like this like pretty regularly. It's actually really common. And I would argue that even most of the time you get events like this, it doesn't lead to a 6 magnitude. So I wouldn't put too much stock in that. You know, it's still possible, but not too much stock. Now, if we go over here, this is one of the very interesting area right here. Because look, so just real quick, when you see 10 kilometers on USGS, that means that is the default amount when they, or the default value when they actually don't have a measurement for how deep it is. So anytime you see 10.0, it just means that they don't know how deep it was, essentially. However, what's interesting about this is that, 1, mean sea level pressure. We go over here. A lot of low pressure cell activity all around this area, right? Very strong and huge OLR anomalies just south of that. And, you know, sort of like the penumbra of those OLR anomalies, I'll just bring that up real quick, is covering this area right here where we're seeing these areas. And they're right by the plate boundaries. So this is 3 things all lining up. On top of that, what we're looking at here, they're getting bigger, right? Oh, I have this by largest. So let me do newest first and get a clearer picture. Sorry about that. So not necessarily getting bigger, my mistake. But we still have these events right here, right? So this is pretty deep. That's really deep. This has gotten bigger. You know what I mean? Slightly shallower, so it's moving up closer to the surface. It went from, you know, 176 up to, you know, and those aren't too far from each other. They're actually right next to each other in geological terms. So, and we don't know how deep this one is. So I would definitely keep an eye on this area. These Indonesian islands right here. And for different reasons, I would also keep an eye up here on the Philippine Islands, right? So where else can we look? So these were some of those clusters left over from what happened in the Philippines. This is just the last 24 hours. And again, like, if just to, you know, illustrate the theory even further, we have these 2 events right here. If we look at the mean sea level pressure over there in Alaska, what do we see? Right there, right off the coast there, we see mean sea level pressure. Do we have any? Nope, no OLR anomalies, but we are seeing some shaking right near that low pressure cell area, those plate boundaries. I don't really know that these are due to the low pressure cell. I kind of feel like they're just a little too far away, but hard to be confident or sure one way or the other. So that's it for today. We did talk about New Zealand. New Zealand did get hit. If we're going to be completely honest here, this far down was not in the forecast, but it, you know, on geological terms, I guess you could say we're in the neighborhood. Not really a successful forecast, but kind of. I could either take it or leave it. But there definitely going to be some aftershocks here. I'd say maybe 50-50 chance we get a 6 magnitude or higher in the middle of the ocean right here. More so, like I said, I think the 2 biggest areas for concern, at least as for today, and this could all change tomorrow, but as for now, Japan. Pretty much all of Japan, maybe leaning, you know, weighted a little more towards the northern areas of Japan, and then this area down here in the Indonesian islands. I think those are the 2 top watch areas. we'll have another live stream tomorrow. We'll see what happens over the next 24 hours. I'll be on here, probably streaming on here every day for the rest of the week, just to give you updated forecasts and see where everything moves and how everything changes. I think that is about it for now. I'm going to flip through these, but that's it for now. If you guys have any questions or comments, if you appreciate any of this, please like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. If you have any questions or any comments or anything, go ahead and leave them in there. I'd love to interact with you guys. And that's it for Quake Weather. Quake Weather out.